So the speaker's working, if anybody joins.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Python 2 to start.
Yeah, all right, okay. Right on time.
Yeah, so it ended up being set up.
All right, no. Good.
I'm updating.
Oh, you're doing that, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I will just leave my screen that way.
I guess so. Oh, it's there.
Yeah, okay.
Now, just give me a second. Probably it's good enough. Yes, it did.
Yeah, let me make it bigger.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, that's good enough.
Are you in beginning?
Yes. Now you're all set.
Okay. I can't spend all day looking at the back of that card. Because Brian's so beautiful. I don't want to say, yeah, but Brian was using it.
Okay.
I know.
Such friendly people we are.
All right, welcome to the Cinder PTG for attending. So we have a day of action-packed excitement. So we just concluded our onboarding session.
Which was me asking, do you want to be onboarded? No, I already work on it. Oh,
okay. So what we're going to do is we've got a few fixed time things that are in bold on the schedule. Otherwise, we're just going to go through the way we usually do, spending as much time or as little time as we need. So we may dynamically adjust things as it goes, but that's okay. We'll have the recording. Jay's keeping notes in the Etherpad, so there'll be a record of everything if you want to go back. And then we're going to plan to do a virtual PTG so we can follow up on this, include people that weren't able to make it. So we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow, but that's the basic plan. So if you think of something later, you can go back and put it on the Etherpad, or you'll have another opportunity to bring it up at the next one. All right, so the first topic here is just Python 2 support. So there's Python 2's end of life in January. Officially, OpenStack is not supporting Python 2 anymore, 30. So the problem I see with this is we don't want to stop testing or having Python 2 gates on our code too soon, because it's going to make backports more difficult. If we have to worry about Python 3 only stuff sneaking in to code that's merged to master. I mean, the alternative is we could get rid of the Python 2 testing, but I think it's going to make backporting things more complicated because we'll have to basically treat the backport patch separately from the patch that got into master. So I think
my question is that ever going to change?
Or after we get to after we EOL, yeah.
Well, we have extended maintenance, so we need to.
But we can cut off the extended maintenance ones. So I think it's the idea with the right. So with the extended maintenance, it's only as long as we agree to do it. So we'll have to just decide at that point. But I think I'm really worried about. Well, so there's two issues. So one is we've got to reduce the number of cores, which we can address by increasing cores at some point. But we've just so we're anyway, our core count's kind of low. So I don't want to have this kind of dual situation where we've got to review the patches separately, the patch for master and then the backport patch. I mean, because I just anyway.
Well, I know what other teams are doing is that they're just accepting that when they drop Python 2 code in master to tweak any backports that they do from there. It really doesn't. We don't have that much code that's compatibility that I think that'll be a issue for us.
Well, I'm worried about the drivers, especially because. Well, anyway, I'm worried about the driver code.
Why?
It's because, right? Well, it's mostly because right? I don't have access to all the backends. I can't really test the driver code carefully. I have to look at it and then count on, it's passing tests. That's good. But, I don't know. I'm just worried about quality control. And I think, so, but basically the issue we're facing is we can have easy backports by keeping the testing in, which seems to me not too bad a thing. Or we can make the backports more difficult. Because
we're not going to be able to keep the testing in. So
why not?
Because the plan is this release that libraries are going to start dropping Python 2. So when we hit that point in the cycle, if we don't drop our Python 2 tests, they're just going to start failing because Oslo libraries are going to blow up.
So all right, which was a good point, but I think that's a real reason why the whole OpenStack should not be doing this so fast. Remove Python 2. I mean,
you can't go with Python 2 anymore because out of date and only a few vendors like Red Hat and Canonical will support this only for commercial distros, as I know. So a lot of consumers can't do anything with Python 2. That's why everybody is moving to Python 3 so fast. 10 years.
Yeah, right.
That is.
Yeah, pretty fast. And I understand all the point of backwards. It could be really painful sometimes, but I don't expect that starting the next day after we decide to go Python only, everybody will push patches to use some new Python 3 features.
Well, I know Eric wants to push a bunch of patches to do all the type checking stuff. You can
Type checkers
right? So we can
also.
right.
But you comment about drivers. It's a bit complicated, but if the driver are not tested good enough, we should not pay attention to it because it's their fail, and if the driver won't work, we should push the vendors to fix drivers. We should not slow down ourselves development just for maybe the drivers are not tested enough, so it will be very slow in Python 3 moving because of some drivers probably won't work.
Yeah, so okay, the libraries are definitely a problem.
And none of this should be a surprise to anyone downstream. We've been talking about getting rid of Python 2 for a long time.
Well, right, I'm not worried so much about, from the downstream consumer point of view, right, they are going to expect the stable branches to be stable.
Yeah,
That's not introducing bugs into them. That's kind of a issue. So are we going to, do we need to, I guess as long as Zool can support running Python 2 tests in the stable branches, I guess we're okay.
Yeah, we can't ensure that drivers' runtime functionality works unless they actually have their third-party CI running on stable branches. But we can at least ensure that unit tests pass so that there's nothing obviously incompatible.
Right.
So we should then make sure that the unit test coverage is sufficient, because sometimes we are like,
Yeah.
we are more lax that way. So maybe in the
Right.
Yeah, because with unit test coverage, we should automatically detect those issues. Okay.
All right, any other comments or? There's going to be breakage. It's software.
Very late. So it's on Python 3, right? So,
Yeah, so my big concern is, I'm sorry.
yeah, okay to go for this.
So what the problem I have is I'm afraid we do a lot of backporting, Cinder,
Yeah.
and I'm afraid of Python 3 only
So
stuff
there is
sneaking in.
one idea like we discussed yesterday with Lance.
Okay.
Keeping Python 2 unit test and functional job as non-voting. So if that is broken due to dependency or something, you can remove. But if it is broken because of new patch is not Python 2 compatible, you can ask them, okay, we wanted to do that. If
But they will break soon in the cycle, right? Because once Oslo starts dropping,
yeah, it's like there is a code change. Things like we are going to use a Python 2 kind of code, but I don't think we have to do that. It's going to do that.
But
Yeah.
you
It's
also
like
what?
going to remove the Python 2 compatible code
From where?
from like say Oslo or any like we are stopping the testing.
I thought the plan was Oslo and some of the libraries.
Yeah, but we don't know when they are going to do it because
Isn't that part of the timeline for this cycle?
yes, but the dropping the 6 is not like they have to do it.
They don't have to do it,
They don't have to.
but they won't be testing, so
They won't do testing. I mean, it's not perfect solution, but it's as long as it's something like you can verify your backporting things. Okay, something is working on Python 2 or not. But yeah, as soon as good point, if breaks due to the dependencies, we have to remove it. But going with the non-voting option is can be tried for some time, as long as it keep working.
I kind of have the opposite stance as I want to be aggressive at getting rid of all the Python 2 compatibility code and get the code cleaned up so that we can move forward.
What do you want to delete? We could probably do it
That's
with
the best thing
with non-voting.
that can happen.
We could probably do it if we make it non-voting. So if someone submits parts that they know they're going to backport,
Yeah.
and they will say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm backporting, look at, oh, Python 2 is failing. So let me make it compatible, or at least I will be aware when I do the backport.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
my personal stance is I wouldn't want it non-voting because I want to break it right now. I'd like to already have submitted the patches that are written.
Yeah.
It's going to reduce our code base by.
Where is this watching?
Is it like, or we can just check on runtime whenever there will be backport that they are very much breaking of Python 2 or not. I mean, we don't need to decide now because we don't know what backport is going to come and whether it's going to be.
I have to say, in terms of quality for Cinder, I am with I think that we will get better code if we can start introducing the Python 3 stuff into Cinder, taking sites, doing things. We will, in the end, our code would be better. We will have less code. And, yeah, and that is a big plus. So.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, yeah, I still have this problem of it would be nice if we could identify the things that would cause problems.
We just, I think we have to go where we have to ensure that the patches have enough unit test coverage so that when we backport it, we are actually testing that it is confirmed that we don't do the classic anything that would fail.
So do we need to add, are there tests that we can add and backport to the stable branches so we can catch stuff there? I mean, those are going to run in Python 2 anyway. The libraries are all fixed, so those should all still run in Python 2. Are there any extra tests that we can add to catch?
We could just make sure that when it lands in master, that there is actual test coverage we can look at the coverage report and make sure that that path is being run at some point, and then know that it's just going to have to be tweaked slightly to backport it to stable train.
Well, I guess that's the how you should go then. All right.
So do we have any action items coming out of that?
Well, the action item is going to have to be, reviewers have to be checking the test coverage on the patches. So everybody be aware that you need to make sure that the new code paths are being exercised, tested.
Which is something we should already be doing.
Yes.
Yeah, which is why, right, we can be so sure that it's going to happen. Oh,
And if we miss something, we might just have to backport, follow on unit
Yeah.
test patch. So,
Picking up a surprising amount of the audio pressed.
good.
thanks.
Yeah, so we're just going to, so contributors are going to have to be a little patient if they get asked to add more tests. I know it's never fun to have to add more tests, but we're probably going to be overly careful. At least I am for a little while. Okay.
Way to be paranoid.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as, I mean, so do we want to have a policy on how fast we're going to start putting Python 3 only stuff into master?
Review.
I'm going to have to start -2ing every patch. I'll have to put up that a lot. -2 everything until we'll get it. Well, I guess my preference would be nobody do anything too drastic. I don't want to see any automated patches that are removing 6 from everything. But right, we'll eventually do it.
Those should be easy, straightforward. Most of the big removal stuff. Those should be,
Well, yeah, 6 is going to be easy. I'm just worried about other stuff.
yeah, but
So I guess don't go crazy on stuff. I don't know. I don't want to stifle development. But, well, I guess on brand new stuff, don't worry about it. We're not going to be backporting it. If you're working on a feature, knock yourself out. I guess that's the thing, right? So if you're doing bug fixes, please be careful about what language features you use. If you're doing features that will never be backported, then we don't have a worry. Although we do want the test coverage. Okay.
That makes sense.
All right, well, that brings us nicely into the next topic.
Is anyone doing the? Oh, you are. Okay. I was just going to ask if anyone's doing the schedule on the PTG bot.
Yep. I'm like a smart ass comment, so
You're being recorded.
yeah, that's never stopped. Are you waiting for me to?
Yeah, it's your topic. So,
I just put it on here because I figured we needed to talk about it. But I think haven't we kind of
we basically touched on it. I mean,
touched on it? Okay.
I mean, I guess, so as far as like removing 6 right away, right? I mean, I think anything that's going to be backported is going to, right, have to use it. At least in the stable branches when we get there. So I don't know that it's a good idea to remove it from master for those cases where somebody wants to do a patch like an extra backport. So I think we should revisit this question. I mean, I feel everybody's pain having to use 6, but I don't know that we want to mandate not being able to use it, because that definitely puts us in the position that patches for the stable branches are.
Yeah, because otherwise we will never reach a point where we stop using it.
Well, we would once all that.
5 years from now, then what's the point of this?
Well, but I guess looking at it the other way, right? If we have to use it, stable backports, we're going to have to use it at some point. So why not
But
use
just
it
in
now?
a stable. Because then the stable never gets it never gets to be Python free, really.
Right.
It's always a hybrid.
Well, it's going to have to be, right? Until Ussuri stable, but right, train's got to be hybrid.
Yeah.
And Stein too.
Yeah.
And
That's
Rocket.
good. Yeah, but as we
Eventually,
move
right.
along,
Right.
if the new code stops adding it,
Right.
that's the point where we will have the first release. We will only have one branch that is not hybrid. But from the next release, we will have 2 and 3, and then the number of backports we can do cleanly without needing to add 6 if we need to do anything will be higher than the number we are actually introducing.
Right. Okay, right. So the place at which you're going to have to.
At some point, you have to say now, and I think this is as good as better.
I think I said in my PTL thing, I wasn't going to be the guy who broke Cinder. But maybe we may be able to do that. All right. So,
Yay, not me.
yeah. All right. So you're in favor of ripping out 6 as soon as possible.
Yep.
I know you. Well, let's all the cores should at least chime in on some about this. I tend to be kind of conservative, I guess.
Well, okay, so if we don't rip it out now, then when do we? Is the problem.
Well,
And
it's
it
going to
would
be
have to be when we're no longer backporting to
any branch that
Stein.
supports too. Yeah. Right.
It's
all
about 5 years.
Yeah.
which you're right, that is like 5 years old.
Yeah.
CLO train.
Oh, okay. I thought you said we have to be EOO trained. Like, what is EOO trained?
Oh my God. ELL of train.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's going to be a long time.
That's
That's
So then on backports, well, we just have to be aware that we have to probably use 6. So you're,
that's fine.
so, but it means that you can't cherry pick it.
Therapy can you fix it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
just
never
one of
thought I
those,
heard you say that.
you cherry pick and you say,
Or it's
with
conflict,
changes
adding 800
for-
lines of code to.
yeah, with changes for I2 compatibility and
Okay.
We are going to have
it's unavoidable.
Okay.
If we are going to into this really painful situation with backwards and driver stability, maybe we could try to ask vendors to run CI for each backward for their drivers. It would be painful too. I understand it.
No, I don't have a problem with that.
Me
I don't have
too.
yeah, but
Yes, I understand.
Well, we can, so, right, so we can encourage but not require. I mean, sort of in their interest to make sure the stuff works. Since they're customers, they're gonna be the ones who, right, feel the pain. Because the driver changes are kind of isolated to the people that actually use that driver.
So encourage driver maintainers to continue Pi2.7 testing. Well, but they would have to do it on backport.
Yes, on the
Right.
product, right.
So how much harder is that to modify CI so that you can have backport changes?
So we need to, we now need to ask for vendors, driver maintainers to run CI for each backward stable branch.
yes, train.
Only to their
The first one, train.
Right.
only to train to the option and their drivers. So it should not be a very it shouldn't take a lot of resources for maintenance for it.
So you're saying, right, so they would only have to test the changes to their drivers.
The problem we've had in the past, though, is that for some, it was very difficult running CI against a stable branch. Not many people were doing it correctly.
Yes.
And now, especially Pi 3 versus Pi 2, that's another monkey wrench.
But I think that we are missing two things. One is that I thought we had already agreed on. Like we are focusing on unit test coverage to detect the Python 2 incompatibilities. And the other is what you're saying that if we make the code in Python 3 and we want to backport, we have to add in, and we are no longer doing clean cherry picks,
Right.
which is what you're concerned.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't help adding the third party CI testing. It couldn't help because you would still have to add the 6 library, is it?
But I guess the idea is just in terms of actually running tests on that code. So it wouldn't help this problem, but it,
But you would have, the thing is, if you have unit test coverage, you are already running it, right?
right.
So the only case that might not be covered is weird.
See, I'm always worried about with the unit tests, right? So much stuff gets mocked. It's mocked so that the responses are exactly what you expect to see and handle. And once you do it in real life, it's not coming back.
But also happens when you run Tempest.
Yeah.
You're not running real. You're always running the same thing
Right.
with the same volume type name, with the same description, with the same. So it's not
Yeah,
that
it's not that much
different.
better.
And then customers come in
killing
and
all my
write
illusions.
into the code and break everything. Yes. We makes no difference.
Yeah. Okay, so well, that would take one monkey wrench out of our relationship with these driver maintainers. Don't make them. Okay. So then, what the so is our policy going to be it's acceptable to do a cherry pick that adds a bunch of stuff?
Oh, it's already been that.
Yeah.
I've already done it a couple of times. When you backport something and suddenly
Yeah.
that you were relying on a test that doesn't exist in the backport,
Yeah.
and you still want the test, you add a bunch of code for the test.
Right. Yeah, I guess as long as it's clearly marked. Okay. All right, so then under this scenario, we can remove.
You don't like it at all.
Say it.
He doesn't like it.
So, no, I just don't want to remove all the stuff faster.
Yeah, we can just do it with the grades, which is going to be what tomorrow when they merge
Yeah.
all the things removed. So
If you've got 2+2 already, it should be fast before -2. But
All right.
I mean, merging it sooner rather than later is better than,
Yeah, soon in the
and so
cycle.
that we can figure out what all doesn't work well earlier in the release rather than later.
yes,
That's a good point.
Right.
I'm sure it's just going to work and be fine.
Well then, okay, I want to move it. Okay. So it looks like we're cool. So remaining Python 2 support, do we just pull it out everywhere? Is what we have to do?
Well, as people think it,
Yeah.
they want to get rid of the 6, they already have that. Okay.
I can see Sean typing now.
Delete.
I may or may not have some stash changes.
All right, so maybe as long as we're talking about ripping stuff out, let's bring the V2 discussion up here. I put it somewhere else.
Okay. Ben came over to talk about policy migration.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's no rush. I mean, if you're, I have, well, I guess we're talking policy. Nova at 11. I've got time.
Yeah, but we can talk also.
And then we can rip stuff out after that.
yeah, I'm trying to think because I thought
I think Colleen
Oh, no,
too,
it's
see
the
if
user server.
who she is.
Okay.
Rip out policy? What?
So we have the policy migration.
Policy,
So
so everything.
that's related to this. Right?
No, that's exactly that.
Okay, so perfect. Then
Yep.
that's exactly what's
We were in
Got
their
it.
talk the other day,
Okay.
and well, if he's here, he can explain what they have introduced, and they are creating a pop-up team with to start working on it for Barbican, Neutron, and Nova. But some people already offered to start working on it or to look into it to create the guidelines for the rest of us. Houston already has it. So we were there and we were thinking probably Cinder should also get into this because otherwise, well, probably you should learn what has been done. The new
Yeah, so
scopes.
Keystone and Oslo have added some more functionality to the policy code that allows us to have things like the read-only role, and they have scopes for different policies. I'm not an expert on all of that stuff. I did the Oslo policy side, which was like 2 lines. Actually, I didn't even do it. I reviewed it. So, but the main gist of it is that in order for us to start using these features anywhere, we have to have them in at least most of the projects. You can't have the read-only role active if one of your projects doesn't have a policy that respects the read-only role because the way this stuff works. So Keystone did all of this migration over the past couple of cycles. They've kind of set up, they have an idea of some best practices. So we're kind of trying to get buy-in from other projects, get them started on writing their policies. And we had a discussion with the QA team yesterday too about testing this because it's obviously really important to make sure that the policy rules are doing what we expect. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know.
So
You
there
guys are policy and code now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there haven't been any changes to the policy enforcement code though. No, I mean in right because you have the also the policy enforcer that we all work on.
Yeah, so the enforcement hasn't changed. What has changed is there are now a couple more fields that get passed into the policy rules. At least scope gets passed in. I can't remember. I don't even remember exactly how the rules work. Where we really need Lance here because he's the policy expert and he's not here. But
Right. The problem is that at your level, you don't know whether something's appropriate to be a reader only.
right,
And also the scope. because we have project system and the other was, what is the project system and domain.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. You have three different scopes, and then you have admin, read-only, and member.
For each. Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
And we are the ones who have to decide which
How it's gonna
policy
behave by
applies
default.
everywhere. Yeah.
Then how are we communicating this?
Well, so for right now, we kind of aren't because they can't use most of this yet.
But I mean, what's our plan? Because it's suddenly they're going to get. I guess with the policy and code, right? All these changes are hidden, but behaviorally, stuff's gonna.
Well,
quite
they're not hidden. I mean, the way Keystone did this is they deprecated all of their old policy rules. So when you move to the release where this has been added, you get deprecation warnings that say, hey, this default is changing. And the way Osmo policy works is when you deprecate a target like that, it ORs the old rule and the new rule together for a cycle. So you get whichever one of those policies is more permissive is what will be enforced, unless you explicitly say just use the new policy, in which case we'll just use the new policy and you can start benefiting from the new scopes and stuff right away. So there is, at least in theory, a smooth upgrade path. Policy and code, that's why I asked about policy and code, is part of it.
Then, as far as we were talking about this yesterday, there are places in the code where we do enforcement beyond what we request in policies. Now, is that still considered okay, or is that something that should be changed? So like the example is, pretty sure this is true in Cinder too, but like plans, one user cannot see, one project cannot see another project's resources. And you can configure any policy you want, it's just not going to happen. And that seems to be pretty appropriate because you don't want, that's like one thing you really don't want, right? They can, if somebody wants to see another project, do that through Keystone, right? That person member of it. Right? But I think that seems to be a place where policies can be misconfigured really easily. Something like that. So I just want to see because the reason I'm asking is that we do some checks pretty far down in the code because we're in the position where we have to create responses that are different depending on whether this is going to an admin type person or a regular type person. And so either we have to make like 500 calls to the database, or we can do it if we do stuff at a lower level. But it's at a level where the policies aren't actually being evaluated. So we could change that. Scare the crap out of me. But I just want to see what's the general OpenStack principle.
Well, so I mean, the scary part is where the testing comes in. I mean, Keystone literally wrote up a matrix for every call of the 9 possible combinations of these things. They have a test for every single one of them. Now, that's extremely heavyweight. I mean, it actually caused performance. We're proposing that everybody run this separate job because it takes long enough to call all of these APIs that many times that, I mean, it was actually causing Keystone because it added so much time to their unit test runs. Now, as far as the code checks for policy, I think
it's not quite policy so much as right. I know that is admin everybody frowns on, but it's not useful in the sense that you could define what you're going to recognize.
Right. So the danger with the is admin check is, at least historically, it's been global admin only. And one of the big features that comes out of this policy work is being able to have project admins that are admin just on their project, but are not admin on a different project. Which is, I mean, it's a thing. It's the Keystone whatever bug that everybody in Keystone has memorized because it's been around for so long and so many people complain about it. You might have problems with that if you have hard-coded admin checks in the code. It may be possible to update those so that
We have some of them even at the database layer.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it depends on,
We check
the check is hard coded, but right, the context, but we can load the context differently.
Yeah,
For what it's going to
make
recognize.
changes.
So, all right, so I think our use of this admin is okay.
Probably.
Let me go look at it.
But it's
yeah,
going
but I
to
know
take
that
time.
admin anywhere is admin.
yeah, and so like I said, I didn't the actual policy updates for any of this. I don't know exactly because I think Keystone actually had some code policy checks that they had to remove to get kind of all of their stuff into the right written policy. I mean, I think ideally that's what we want people to do, but if you have stuff that's just fundamentally that
Well, I
can't
mean, I guess
be done,
it's sort of a philosophical question about whether the stuff that belongs to a project belongs to that project, right? Because if it does, and there's no way you can undo it, then
well, and I mean, if you have
policy
functional
about it.
reasons that you can't have other people modifying another project or something, then I guess that's probably the way it goes. I guess
Because you have, right, we need the permissions to be able to make a particular API call. So you want everybody to make the, list volumes call. But which volumes they see, a whole different issue.
so. That's actually part. I wish we had a Keystone person here because they have the same problem.
Yeah.
That certain calls, list users returns different things depending on the scope of the user that's making the call and the token and what the policy says. So they actually have testing for that in this matrix of stuff. I don't know exactly how that works on their side, so I can't really speak to that.
All right. All right. So what we can take away from this is the wave of the future. So
This is something that's we think is super important to OpenStack to get as many projects as possible onto this as soon as possible.
Well, it makes, I think, yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to kind of rationalize policies and projects.
Yeah.
So they all mean the same thing. And easier.
Well, and also because if we don't implement it, nobody can actually use it. Even if Neutron or whoever can do it,
Right.
we will be blocking the feature. That's the reason why we wanted to bring it up, at least to bring everybody up to speed that this exists. This is something that people are working on, and to decide whether we want to, somebody wants to say, hey, I want to be involved in this first effort, or if we want to wait until they do it and then follow what they did.
Yeah, and hopefully this isn't going to be full work. I know Keystone had some gray area policies where there had to be some discussion with the team about, is this system scoped, is this domain scoped? They're a little bit unusual in that way because they're so domain focused that you probably aren't going to have some of the issues that they did. So I think one of the outcomes of the session earlier this week was that they were going to try to come up with guidelines for characterizing APIs and say, if the API is doing X, then it's probably system scope. If it's doing Y, then it's domain scope or whatever. To try to kind of make this, as easy for the other projects to do as possible. I said there's probably going to be a few that are but hopefully just a few, and you can kind of work through those, and then it's just a question of finding people to do the work at that point. It's the goal anyway.
Well, I'll take an action item to understand what how the scope is being expressed, the policy configuration, and then start drafting how we're going to recognize that. Because we'll have to, no matter how we do this, we'll have to have a clear. We don't have a lot of testing area. We'll need to have a clear matrix of how we expect this stuff to behave. Right, before we can even implement it. So, okay. Then it should be fairly straightforward.
Well, if you have the matrix, yes. Right. If not, there will be cases that are.
That's what we have to do.
Well, we could start with the easy stuff. And it's because first you need to figure out how things work, how the listing works, which is easier probably in terms
Well,
of.
listing's probably good because, right, we do have all that stuff shows up in the listing. Making sure you see all what happened there. Okay. All right, so we'll need a. Okay.
But we have
We
9
should
possible
also-
combinations for this.
Yeah.
So we need to be writing 10 test tests for it.
9 tempest tests for every change.
Well, okay, so this was one of the QA discussions yesterday. Keystone Keystone regrets doing them in unit tests because all of Keystone's tests for this were in unit tests. Because of the way Keystone's unit tests work, it was extremely heavyweight to run each test because they were like having to stand up all of the users, like the default users and stuff, in the database every single test. And multiple Keystone cores tried to figure out how to use some other test tools to reduce that duplication of the test, and they didn't have any luck. Yay! She can probably answer some of your questions. So they actually wish they had done them in Tempest. Discussing with the QA team yesterday, they said for like Nova, running the full API call is so heavyweight that it might not be practical to do them in Tempest tests. So it may still be necessary to do them as unit tests. I don't know what the situation with Cinder is. That's something that's going to have to be decided on a project by project basis.
We should probably look for someone to volunteer. Start.
And I don't know, I mean, maybe one approach is you could start off doing like the first set of tests, one in each method, and see which one's faster. Because I don't know, do you have any idea how people would figure out whether they want to use Tempest or unit test for this? Other than just try both, see which is faster.
Keystone's experience with the unit test was really slow, but it's just this way we implemented it was really being slow. But we think faster for us. Really not really the case.
For us, should be faster.
And it could, I mean, if you couple all the unit tests, which are not supposed to be, that would just change that. So maybe for this, maybe some stuff we can do for the tests that ordinarily. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, it's seriously. Okay.
I guess nobody wants to volunteer to start working on it.
I guess I'll take that as part of the set up some initial tests. Unless you're like really excited about this. Right. Okay. All right. So I'll do that.
There was also a question, and I don't know the answer to this. Apparently they have some policy checks that are happening in code, like in their database layer and stuff, where they're checking for admin and things like that. Is that a huge problem for this?
Issue I can't. I don't know the specifics. Plans to be able to.
That's what I said too.
Yeah. So yes, it's an issue because we want all policy to be able to be overridable by the operator in the policy files.
So even this is my question was even things that are so like traditionally one project cannot see another project's resources. So that's something you could check in code without actually using a policy, and that's what's happening in a lot of places. So I guess so. Yeah. So my question is just so that's the kind of thing where it's like in the past, it's been a no-brainer. You just don't allow anybody to figure that no matter what they want to do. But is OpenStack sort of spirit that we should be able to control that kind of thing in policy?
I don't know, not necessarily.
Okay.
Um, so what we have with policy is you can set scope types, but the scope types aren't overridable.
Okay.
Anyway, so if you're just going, we're using different methods, say the same thing to say this is only and this is going to be limited to resources and projects, might be an okay way to do it. I would have to look at the code to sort of get more context about what you're talking
Right.
about.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, and what's the status of the community goal for this? I remember seeing your email saying maybe it's that.
So we had a forum session on it on Monday, and we said we want to form a pop-up team to start to sort of do some of the legwork with the bigger project. So if you guys think you're ready to get started on it in Cinder, like join the pop-up team, and once like Cinder, Nova, Neutron, maybe Glance have made some headway,
Right.
then we can bring it to the rest of the community and say, well, we all got this done. Now it's just
Right. All right. So put me as an action to join the pop-up team. Okay. Once I understand issues, I can try to delegate.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Keystone split these up. It wasn't like one person did all of them, right?
great.
It's a very parallelizable piece of work.
Yeah, the way Lance organized it is he did a bug report guide, so everybody can work on it.
I don't have any more questions. Anybody else? Anybody have any general comments about house load while we got that?
We need to be having a new gate job for it.
When we what?
We need to be having a new gate job for it.
A specific gate job for this?
Yeah, so it will be running on, like we will be writing test on Tempest. So it will be running on Tempest gate or on Cinder gate.
I don't know. That's going to have to be determined. I think. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I think until we have tests, it's going to be too soon to write a plan for where exactly.
How Keystone did it? Keystone has a gate job for it.
Yeah.
It's running on Keystone.
Sorry.
Is it running on Keystone?
So we have unit tests for, and that's in its own separate job that we get on. But we're probably going to move that to Tony's test and probably create a separate job for that.
I think yeah. Once the tests are located somewhere, then we can create a job. So right. Okay.
So what we talked about with the QA team was to have everybody put their own, to set up some framework in Tempest to create these new personas. That's like a system admin or like a project reader, things like that. And then the projects could write their own RBAC tests in their own time.
Okay.
And that way the Tempest team doesn't have to manage all that and you can be
Okay. All right, and that makes sense because it's just, all right. So stuff will be defined, so we just use it. So it sounds like it will be chunks.
and but we'll, I think the idea is that's a way that we're going to offer
Okay.
to be able to do it. That's going to be a possibility.
Okay.
But I don't think it's not going to be a requirement. That's what you want. As long as you do the test.
Right.
Maybe Cinder 10 is 38.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess these aren't the kind of things that are going to change so much that they would be easily runnable unit tests. Right. The policy changes. Once we got the defaults, we're going to be pretty much not working with stuff until we add new features. Okay. So yeah, I don't think there's a real reason for us to have this unit tests. Just people who are working on the policy stuff will just have to know to test locally using templates before they submit it in their breaks. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Colin. Thanks, man.
Oh, yes. I love the PTG bot.
Okay, so we got our photo in 10 minutes.
Okay. So let's talk about. We talk about V2 in 10 minutes. All right. So with sure. The V2 has been deprecated. I think the last time we had this discussion, the holdup was we weren't sure everybody had stopped using V2. I can't remember.
I don't remember, but V2 and V3 are V3.0. If they are not identical, there's some one difference. Or something
It
like
should
that.
be easy to adapt.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking there's probably two phases to this, or at least I'm proposed doing this in two phases. So right now, the state of the code for the API is that some calls for V3 actually use V2 classes where the actual stuff is in extensions too. So there's some calls that were extensions in V2 that were made regular calls in V3. So you can't just yank all the V2 stuff out of the tree because it will break large parts of V3. But I'm thinking we should at least remove the API endpoint, do that stuff, and then we should refactor to move the current V2 extent. I think it's just the V2 extensions. 100%. Well, there's probably something somewhere. But then move the V2 extensions into the actual code. So it's just all in one location. But I think we need to. Yeah, if we do it, yeah. Because I'm thinking there may be a lot of reviews moving. But, well, it's going to be like a patch with that.
Yeah, but basically you are moving the whole content, inserting in V3. But yeah, but a lot of different files.
Right, so there's going to be a lot of files that I don't know that that's. I guess it's a start.
I was looking at that removal, and there's actually a lot of background work that we need to get done first before we can start actually disabling it in our code.
Okay.
DevStack or Tempest has a lot of assumptions built in that V2 is going to be there, so it doesn't even recognize if we disable the V2 API. Because it's a config option, we can't disable the V2 API right now at runtime, but everything else breaks because of that. So there's a few places outside of Cinder that we need to prepare before we can actually get rid of it in our code.
So maybe that was the problem.
Right. Okay.
Been a little while since I thought through that, but I think somewhere I might have notes yet saying with at least a few of the areas that we need to.
Okay. So with the stuff. Wondering if we could get Sophia's this.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Instead of the stuff she's doing, turning out to become difficult on managing volumes.
Well, this is not going to be easy because you have to actually understand different pieces. Like
right.
Yeah.
It
is.
Yeah. It's not a single project, a single feature. It's jump all over the place.
Actually, thinking about it, I think DevStack itself won't stack with it. But that's due to OpenStack clients having some assumptions baked in. So there's kind of a, oh, that breaks. Oh, because that's broken. Oh, because that's broken. So
what we can do is we can yank it and then wedge the gate until everybody else detects this stuff.
I think I actually have a patch out there that I could just hit recheck and see what breaks today.
Yeah.
See if anything got better. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they're here. I'll paste this in the Etherpad.
All right, this will be interesting to see. Yeah.
If I can.
I guess the theme for cycle should be slimming down Cinder.
Yes.
Does it sound like everything we're doing is just taking stuff out? Simple add some policies now.
Apparently, I need to follow that path.
Get on the train.
Oh, the train left the station.
Yeah.
Hey. With the buffet go.
All right, so let's do this as a follow-up for the virtual PTG, is to follow up on Sean's patch and try to figure out get a list of what we actually have to make happen. Do this, because I imagine what's going to happen is that we want to remove this, we're going to have to do the Tempest work because nobody else is going to do it. Same thing for DevStack.
And that might be a good point where we can get an intern or something. If once we've identified here's a specific chunk of this work.
Right.
Okay, I'm reading, and V3 is exactly the same as V2, except
The REST API call.
yeah,
Okay.
except the root, which now returns information about the new version.
Okay.
Everything else is the same. 3.0, which is the base.
So really, all anybody needs to do is just change the V2 to V3.
Yep, that should, because we only added V3 because we were afraid that someone would pass in a micro version to V2 and would silently get
Something else.
fallback behavior. So
Which means that I don't know if we could do in parallel both things, the extra work we need to do and the work inside. If we just change the catalog and make V2 point to V3 and then get the things working outside, inside, and then remove that. It's a dirty hack, and maybe we don't want it.
yeah, I think there's some code that hard codes /V2.
Oh, yeah.
So that'd be great if we could just update the catalog.
Yeah. Okay. So not as easy as we want.
Nothing ever is.
Yeah.
So I forgot to check where the picture location.
Just straight out the door.
Okay. We still have 3 minutes.
They got a late start. I don't know if they've caught up or not.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be my guess.
All right, I can see it.
The camera's
We have a need for like 500 interns. I haven't given up yet on somebody to work on the changing the SQL alchemy migrate stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be possible to have somebody for that.
Yeah, I was supposed to look at Alembic with in terrain, and I never got to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think we need some person to just do it. You know, just focus on that only. So you should know something in a month or so.
Okay. speaking of the V2 removal, one of the things that we talked about in Vancouver was at some point when the API evolves through enough microversions of cutting that and making that highest microversion the base functionality of a V4.
But we don't have to do that this cycle.
We don't have, I guess just a reminder that for people to think about that at some point because right now we can add stuff, we can never really get rid of stuff with microversions. So really the only way we can do that is to
declare V4.
Yeah, kind of cut the line and say, okay, now we've made the changes and now we're going forward. So it seems like an appropriate point to mention that.
All right, let's adjourn for a photograph.
Okay, are you gonna pause the recording then? So that
Possibly.